Hey, Sunshines, it's Mandy.
And Brittany, we're happy to be back for episode 2.
Episode 2. We did it. We're here.
Thank goodness. Episode 1 was a success, honestly. I'm actually very proud of us because we had, like we said in episode 1, we had no script. We had no idea, kind of like where we were going. Of course, we had ideas. But speaking on that plan, it's just whatever's right, whatever flows.
Here we go. I think we talked a lot about when we decided we wanted to do this. So we had a lot of moments like where we'd be sitting there having a conversation and we'd like look at each other and be like, I thought this would be such a good podcast.
It's a podcast topic.
That's a podcast topic. That's it. Like, that's an episode right there. Like, we'd have moments where we're like, we just had good conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like scripting it, like, it just gets not flowy and wonderful. And I lose that genuine. And I think we both are on the same page of like, we want to bring you guys genuine content.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to be genuine. We want it to be real, authentic, vulnerable. And I think when you really heavily script things, you lose a lot of that.
Yeah, so agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Now, the only thing that we do have a plan for, though, is last episode we went on a few tangents, but the focus there was how I came to Charlotte. And so now we're going to transition to Mandy and talk about how she ended up here in Charlotte, our northern gal, all the way in a little down south, a lot of down south.
A lot, yeah.
So yeah, Mandy, to start off, what brought you to Charlotte and how did you get here?
Okay, so I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, like more cows than people, really not a lot happening, graduating class of 60, so super tiny.
Yeah.
Tiny town. There's no high school down the road from us. We have graduating classes of like 7. And they're like K through 12. It's insane. Yeah, like the smallest. I think of people now and I'm like, oh my God, you had a graduating class of 100 people, 300 people, 500 people. I'm like, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
So like grew up north, lived there until I was 19 and we had a very similar start. So I initially went to college for early childhood development and I wanted to be a parenting coach. And I was like, I want to teach people how to parent. I had seen my own like personal stuff with my nephew and watched and like my nieces and nephews and my family. And it's like, sometimes you have kids and nobody just gives you the guidelines, right?
Right.
It's hard. And then I was like, okay, but the people who know they need a parenting coach, like probably don't need a parenting coach. And the people who need a parenting coach, like don't have that awareness. It's like, I was like, oh no, what are you doing? And my fallback would have been a preschool teacher. And I was like, I would love it. I would have so much fun, but would it be underpaid, underappreciated, and it wouldn't align with my financial goals. And so I quickly pivoted and I went into nursing. And I was like, well, be a nurse. Sure, why not? Because there's nothing else to do in Vermont aside from teach or be a doctor, nurse. Right. And then I was like, oh no, that's not for me. Like my first cat dissection lab, like anatomy and physiology. I was like, that's it. Thanks. Nope. I'm an English human. I am not a science human. Like, not my thing. And I like felt so lost. So like I grew up feeling very like the black sheep essentially and very ostracized, out of place. And so for me, it was like, what the heck are you doing? And I was supposed to go study abroad in Australia and didn't end up going because a family member was sick with cancer. And I was like, if I go and something happens, like I'm just not going to feel great.
Right.
And so I ended up coming here to Charlotte. So I have a cousin who lives in Lake Norman.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, great. This is not too far, right? Like I'm out of the nest. I'm pushing myself. I'm trying something new. But it's like, she's there if it hits the fan.
Right.
Like if it really gets crazy and you need to go crash on someone's couch or you need a homemade meal, like she will always be there. And she has a similar like breaking the cycle kind of story. And I was like, okay, she gets it.
Right. Yeah.
And I came down here. I had nothing in my car aside from like shoes, my dog, and some pillows. I had no furniture. And I had just enough money in my bank account to pay for my first month's rent and my security deposit. And I was 19 or 20 at the time. Wow. So I couldn't even sign for the apartment by myself. My dad had to like virtually sign because they were like, well, you're not old enough to rent an apartment on your own. And I was like, great. So he virtually signs and I start like bartending and waitressing. And I'm like, oh shoot, what are you going to do? Like I dropped out of school. What are you going to do? You have to do something. It actually started working at a startup staffing that's based in tech and it's a SaaS product and was like, great. I had spent some time when I was at home working for a Lamborghini Ferrari autocross traveling company.
Fun.
And was like, I like traveling. That's fun. She likes to travel. And I had substitute taught while I was in high school, and then right after graduating. And I was like, okay, great. Like I can teach and I can travel. And this company had a position opening for a traveling trainer. Like I was like, the world, right? Like what an opportunity. And I was like, okay, this company didn't exist. Yeah, there's nothing about them online. Like you couldn't see anything.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it was in Hickory. Have you ever been to Hickory?
I actually have never been to Hickory.
It's like Hickory's kind of this. It's Hickory. I'm so sorry if you live in Hickory, but if you live in Hickory, you know. And I just like pulled up to this old mill, and I was like, this is probably where I get trafficked. Like this is the end. And I went in and had an amazing interview, hit it off. Like
There you go.
amazing, incredible people. And stayed with that company for 5 years.
Wow.
And like just grew. So the cool thing about joining a startup is like they're growing as you're growing. And so like I had no idea what I was doing, but I had that work ethic that we talked about of like, you give me a task and I'm going to figure out how to get it done. And I'm going to do it. Like, I love that. I love problem solving. I love a chance to like dive in. And I just did it with everything they gave me. And it was like, I went from a traveling trainer to an operations manager to HR manager and like managing onboarding and all of our hiring and recruitment. Stepped into managing our field staff. And at the age of 23 was managing half of our field staff across the country. Period. Like was a small baby, had no, no right, but stepped into that role and was like, oh, you're in the right spot.
Yep.
Right. Like you're meant to lead, you're meant to motivate, you're meant to encourage. And that kind of set off the bells for me of like, this is that we are on to something. And I think it was like until that moment, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I have no idea where I want to go, what I want to do. I am lost.
Yeah.
And so like loved that company, loved partnering with that company, and like have close contacts there, love it. And it really inspired me of like, okay, you're a leader. You want to lead, you want to empower, you want to motivate. And then you also have some entrepreneurial, like love the startup industry. Well, sure, I love that. And so from there, I actually met my partner who ran his own business, stepped in and helped him run his business. So I was like, sure, you can do that too. You can learn that and learn that. And was like, okay, yeah, wait, you really do want to go into business.
Yeah.
And then from there, joined you and we began working together. And then as of late, I actually went into business for myself.
Announcement.
She runs her own business. And the two were just like colliding. And I was like trying to do both and it wasn't happening. And I knew that like the thing I was going towards was the thing that aligned with like my goals, my morals, my vision, that fulfillment.
Exactly.
And it like filled my cup. So I launched my own business, serving as a chief of staff to underserviced CEOs who are trying to expand and grow their business and need like that right-hand person. Because I was like, all right, Mandy, if you want to go into business, what the heck do you know how to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know how to do everything.
Exactly.
And it's like such a problem where people are like, it's that jack of all trades and like master of none. Like I'm so like widespread that I was like, you don't have like, I don't have you don't want me to pin curl your hair. You don't want it. It's not great. It's not gonna like, I don't have a skill.
Yeah.
Per se, like a finite skill, but I was like, oh, that is your skill.
You definitely have
Like
a skill.
that widespreadness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And was like, let's capitalize on it.
Yeah.
And so I like started building this business, put it out into Fiverr, took off immediately. And was like, oh, that's great. And then got to partner with this company, One Text. So really like cool to see that come to fruition. And that was like my get to Charlotte and now really like grow in Charlotte.
Yep.
Charlotte is a booming city.
It is.
And it's growing. And I love that it's a melting pot.
Yeah.
So nobody from Charlotte is actually from Charlotte. Like everybody's from somewhere else.
Probably like 3%, I feel like.
I feel like that's rough.
Because everybody, I mean, and I actually know, like, I think 2 people, one of my very close friends, that are like legit from Charlotte that live here. But everybody else, like, they're from all over.
There's a statistic that 100 new people come to Charlotte every single day.
Every day.
Every single day, 100 new people.
They just want to be near us.
That's it. I'm like, please, I love it here, but please stop coming. Please stop. We're full. I love you. But I love that. Yeah. What it means is like, you get so many cool people to connect with and get to hear their stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody has their own story. Like, I feel like everyone who comes to Charlotte has a similar story to us where they're like, I wanted more.
Yeah. Exactly. It is a place to like chase more. You don't feel like you're at a cap when you're here. And I think that that's like really important. But also another thing that I thought about while you're talking. So I'm sure that y'all remember from episode 1 about how Mandy was saying, watching me in my Love is Blind experience and being able to like watch it really unfold. Because for backstory, Mandy wasn't with the company that we worked with together at when I went on the show. However, when everything was announced this year in what date was that?
February, Diane. Yeah. And
January. When everything was announced about like the cast and who was going to be on the show, that's when Mandy got to see everything unfold. And so I actually was able to like have her under like right on my right arm and just be able to like do it all together. But really, really important with that of her watching me, I've been able to watch her in the same scenario of growing herself and becoming into this new chapter of her life with another door opening up with Empowered, which has been such a great success. But what I think I value the most about this whole journey for you is that you've done it so quietly. It hasn't been like it's almost been effortless. Like it was meant for you. And I know that, yes,
but
while not on your end, but like,
this is what was naturally meant to
right.
happen.
Presentation wise, everything just flowed so eloquently for you.
Yeah.
And like you've carried it so well and been like, okay, like this is what I want to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. And then you absolutely achieved it like that.
Yeah.
And so,
which was alarming to me too. Like, so I watched my dad was an entrepreneur growing up, like he was in woodworking business, and I watched that and I was like, hesitant because I'm like, this sucks for people. Like some people, it does not. And I like was a little alarmed that like I start this and 3 days later I have my first client.
Exactly.
And like I'm working with a really incredible client where I'm like, I am so empowered and inspired by you. And so getting to do that was like, this seems too easy.
Exactly.
It was so weird.
But I think that goes back to too, like when the fulfillment piece, like that is you're learning, although you're working for your client, you are also benefiting and growing and, challenging yourself and becoming this wonderful person and also too so successful in your career that you've created for yourself. And like it's not no one else is signing that off. It's the Mandy Rogers.
Yeah.
And so like that's something so powerful too.
Yeah.
But it's also about like being in the right place at the right time, being in the right mindset, and the door so effortlessly open.
Yeah.
And you're there, you're in, 10 toes down.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so effortless.
Yeah. I think the thing that made it, so it's like I really shifted. I went kind of radio silent. Yeah, but the last like year and a half. And like really shifted on like, okay, you need to focus. Like you have to focus. And why are you doing this? What are you doing it for? And it's like, there's some, when you go out on your own and you create a business and you do something new, like there's some fear of failure.
Yeah.
And I'm such a like, oh my gosh, I get him. Like I'm a perfectionist. So failure is like, we don't want that. Nobody wants to fail. And so I was like, okay, work on this in silence. Like build it in silence. And as you build it, like let people be enamored, right?
Yeah.
Be like, oh, that's what you were doing.
Right.
And like, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I am still in the building and growing stages, but to be able to like create this behind the scenes and just like silently work on it and like put my pride to the side almost. Like, I think really I learned in the last 6 months of like stand in who you are and take that and carry that through. And I was like, okay, you need to venture into this with who you are true for. Right. And it's like, you want to lead with passion. You want to lead with kindness, consideration. And like, I want to put my ego at the door. And so I literally was like, let's leave your ego out of this. Yeah. Leave it out. And in doing that, like, it was like, okay, don't announce that you're really like venturing down this. Don't like, you don't need to air it. You don't need to show it. It's like your success will then speak for itself.
Yeah. And I think, speaking of egos, I feel like a lot of people allow, talking about success, a lot of people allow their egos to kind of get in the way because, you want to be braggadocious about like, hey, like this is what's upcoming. But one thing that I've learned about myself and what I try to do is anytime that I'm working on something, I'm like, I don't say anything. Like when I was doing Beauty by Bee, like I didn't let anybody know other than you and KP, like, okay, here's my plan. Because I just have a fear of like, oh my God, what if this fails? And now everybody knows about it.
Yes.
And they're going to look at you and be like, where's it at?
Yeah. And then while you're building it, it's like, it is so easy to have your energy, mindset impacted by those around you. So like the naysayers, that people who are like, you can't do that. And I was like, oh, I know they're going to come for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not putting this out there for you to like take any of my joy. And it was such a beautiful thing to be like, I think maybe 5 people knew what I was doing, like max.
Yep.
And it was like, I'm just going to do this. Yeah. I'm going to like not allow that in. And that was probably the first time I've done something so privately. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. That's incredible. Like you get to control your mindset on it.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Right. I think, you know, it's good to be able to be comfortable in that silence too. I think that's a really,
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. Like you want
you
to
have
know,
to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And you have to motivate yourself, right? Like, so you can't be fueled from the attention from other people, the pats on the back and the praise and the like, wow, you're doing amazing. Like you have to find it in yourself to find that motivation. And I would say probably like determination and sticking to what you need to do.
Yeah.
And instead of allowing like the endorphins of like, oh wow, you're so amazing, you're so incredible, I can't believe you're doing that. Like I think I like was like, I don't want to feed off of that, because that's so like such a slippery slope. Because then you're just gonna keep doing things for the approval of others.
Exactly.
And you're never like aligned with your intentions or your integrity. And that is not what I want to. You want to build a whole business off of what other people want you to do.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And I think too, it comes back, and I definitely just lost my train of thought, but you know, having that, you know, happiness piece, it's like that comes and goes. And if you are feeding off of that, maybe those endorphins of when like they're absolutely at their highest point and you're at that high peak, and then all of a sudden, if you're feeding off of that, that too is going to come and go. Everybody's not going to consistently be there. Everybody's not going to sing their high praises to you 24/7. So like you can't feed your business off of that. I think honestly, feeding your business off of the lowest point of being like, this is just me. Yeah. This is just me rocking with this. Like I don't have anybody that I can even be an arm's reach to. And if you boom it from that, there's no stopping you.
Yeah. Because it's like, you know, you can do it. You've proven to yourself that you are capable. Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, right? Like proving it to yourself. Like, great, you can prove it to 100,000 people, but they just see what you're showing them, right? Like, you know, deep down, have you achieved the things you want to achieve? Are you moving in the direction you want to move in? And if not, like, you're the one who's really going to know. So if you could prove that to yourself, like, I think that's half the battle.
Yeah, I agree. So do you think that watching your dad be an entrepreneur, like your childhood, do you think that that has something to do with your motivation and like where you wanted to go in life?
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? Like, so I saw a lot of flexibility.
Okay.
I saw like my college tuition for my first year was paid for.
Beautiful.
Like he was able to work that into the business, and like we had flexibility in that front. I think it made me equally as excited and hesitant. So like family vacations, like he's got his laptop open, things are stressful. When the business isn't doing well, like the business and family like feel that. Yeah. And I can't tell you, so my dad ran a woodworking business. So like we would drive around at night on the forklift and close up the shop. And there would be like Saturdays where I'm in counting jar lids. We made like little wooden jar lids. And I'm like in counting them, putting them in a box. So I think that's my work ethic. Yeah. Of like show up, see what needs to be done. Was learning to like help manage things for him. And like, he was always like, hey, be a part of this, like, welcome, come on in. But seeing like how impactful it can be, it made me hesitant, where it's like, I'm not going to have my joy and happiness and life like kind of hinge on this. Yep. So I think for me, it's important to build a sustainable business. Yeah. Something that sustains itself, that doesn't necessarily impact my day to day. And it was cool to be able to transition in a way that like I started this business and it wasn't the thing paying my bills. Right. Right. So like I'm showing up to work every day and I'm building this business and I'm like, okay, this is on the side. Exactly. Great. And that takes so much pressure off of like, it does. You can just show up and you can have that passion and joy for it. And it's a little different. Like when it's a thing that's covering your expenses and your bills and it shifts. But I think knowing that there's always outside of that. Like,
Yep.
and kind of taking that pressure off myself. Like, super intentional about that.
Yeah, I can agree. So my stepdad actually, he ran his own business and he was with Cherokee Kenworth, the trucking company. And it is a lot of pressure. And, you know, being an entrepreneur, you know, the business was passed down to him, but look at the amount of pressure that is. Now, granted,
Yeah.
speaking on, and once again, another episode when talking about childhood trauma,
Y'all have
that will be a whole nother thing because he was actually diagnosed with MS, and so he no longer has a company. But the thing is that, you know, you do have to, when you are an entrepreneur and you step into that life, because it's a lifestyle, like you truly have to be in a different mindset. And I think a lot of people like question like CEOs and C-suite level people or founders of companies because they're like, you know, they do have a sense of roboticness to them.
Yeah.
But the difference, and I think where you and I absolutely agree, is having, while yes, you have to be very, let me say this the right way, you have to be very programmed in a certain way, in a certain mindset. Where Mandy and I agree so much is having those morals be at the forefront of our mind rather than allowing that, oh, you know, we're just worried about success.
Yes.
We're just worried about like finances for our future families. That is where I think you and I differ.
Yes. So it's like an empathy. The way I've been putting it is like empathy first, EQ driven.
Absolutely.
Like high EQ, I'm making all decisions with EQ in mind. And I think like for me, empathy really comes into play.
Yeah.
It's like I used to be like, oh my God, I hate that I'm so empathetic. And I'm like, oh no, no, no. It is your superpower. Just watch, because you'll be able to understand how to treat people, how to interact with people. And at the end of the day, if you can't understand those basics and people don't appreciate the person you are, nobody wants to do business with you.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't show up well anywhere if you
Exactly.
have a low EQ, low empathy. Like, it makes doing business really difficult. I think it makes having empathy makes it hard, but it's
It
like
does.
the type of business I want to run.
Yeah.
I want to run something with integrity, with honesty, and with a genuine like, connection for other humans. And you can't do that without EQ.
No, you can't. And I definitely, that is actually one of Mandy's like absolute number one skills. For sure. Your EQ is like skyrocketing. And I think that that's what, right.
The drop. Thank you.
But I think that is what makes Mandy Mandy. You would not be the same without that of any sort, because that is like, it's so prevalent and like so noticeable within you. I think that's whenever the first day I met you, that was something that I noticed. And I was like, wow, this girl is like nice. Like, and it's so crazy because we live in a world today where everyone is just like, they'll shake your hand, they'll say hey to you, but what it is that some people can be fake, you know.
Yeah, it's not genuine.
Exactly.
It's not.
But like something about you is that you're like, I'm a go-getter and I want to be successful and I want to be happy, I want to be fulfilled, I want to do all of these things, but like I will never allow something or someone to alter who I am.
Yeah.
And so like you should be proud of yourself for sure.
Yeah, that took me a minute. I think like it's a battle, right? I'm like knowing I didn't know who I was at 20. I didn't know who I was at 25.
Yeah, and you started
like,
so young too.
It was so early. And I also like I don't know that I know fully who I am now.
Yeah.
It's such a like I'm constantly evolving, growing, and changing. But it's like I know that I always want to show up as the most like genuine version of what I have to offer. And it's like I think the connection that you get to make with other humans like monumentally different when you show up like authentically, vulnerably, and with a genuine kindness. Like you get more opportunities because people want to connect with you. They want to be by your side. They want to interact with you, and then they get to be vulnerable with you because they know it's safe. And like people don't want to connect with people they can't be vulnerable with.
Right.
And like the world is full of so many people you just cannot be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Because they either like haven't worked through their own stuff or don't understand the power of it.
I think it's too like, you know, you and I aren't perfect and we still have things to work through, but ours is like we're motivated to work through it. And I think that's the missing piece, you know, like Because I think you and I both know that we know so many people that need to work through it, but the motivation is
It's the awareness too, right? Like
right.
this idea,
Or the lack
it's
of.
EQ.
Yeah.
It really is.
Everything comes back.
All circles back. Yeah, if your EQ isn't there, you're not aware that and you're not aware you're not a kind person.
Mm-hmm.
And like you don't have empathy. And
Yeah.
you're either not aware or you don't care. Either or is it the same problem.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're gonna keep spinning your wheels on the same problems. Like in business specifically, nobody wants to work for you, nobody wants to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you get quality connections and relationships. I feel like it impacts everything to be so unaware. And it's like it's also hard work though. Like being aware means taking ownership of trauma, taking ownership of like your childhood, your upbringing, the things that were passed into you. And I think that for some people, like they're just not there in their journey yet. Yeah, meeting everybody where they're at. And I've had such a like, it's a frustration thing for me where I'm like, I just want everybody to do the work. I want everybody to be there. I want us all to be evolved. But it's like, not everybody wants to.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Not everybody wants to. They don't care to. It's not important to them. They have too much trauma.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like there's so much that it's like breaking into that, I'm sure is terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
painful. And if you have 45 years of it, 50 years of it, 60 years of it, 20 years of it, like that's hard.
Yeah.
And it's acknowledging like, and it's also taking ownership of like, I'm not showing up as a quality person. And that's hard too. Like that sucks. Self-reflection is hard.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. It's you know, that self-reflecting, but also showing up and being kind sometimes is actually harder.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Like it is
Because
the hardest.
and speaking about patience with the first episode, like I am not patient. And there's been so many times where, you know, I'm talking to my mom and where patience would be so valuable in that situation. And I choose not to have patience. And
Nice topic. You said choose. That is such a like,
yeah,
people miss that. Like
Yeah.
you made the active choice.
yeah, right.
So aware of you to be like, I'm not choosing to have
Exactly.
kindness and patience in this moment. Like,
Yeah.
don't make it up.
Because you truly, you
Yes.
do. You have to choose to have those
Yeah.
patience.
Active choice.
And you know, that is when, like, say you're in a situation where, like, you legit have, like, screaming match. You have to choose to literally sit back and be like, okay, I'm not going to outburst right now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Exactly. Like, it is, like, damn hard.
Like emotionally, yeah. Like I said, humans, I think we're wired to react, and emotionally, like it's almost it feels good.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? Like to like
Yeah, to
lash
get it
out,
off your
to get
chest.
it out, and it's like you feel good in the moment,
Mhm.
and you're taking that like easy feel good moment, but then hopefully down the road you don't feel good about it, right? Like as you look back and you're like, I didn't really show up how I wanted to.
Yeah.
That's not like I'm not proud to show up like that.
Exactly.
And so for me, it's like, okay, referencing back, forget about the moment right now. If you're to look back at this 5 years from now, how do you want to show up?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of person do you want to bring?
There you go. That's another podcast title.
How do you want to show up?
How do you want to show up?
How do you want to show up? It's huge.
And also reactions. Yeah,
It's hard though.
it's vital too. It's so important, and it truly makes us, because I feel like a lot of people too, and we'll need to get back to how you got Charlotte. But
We need a roadmap.
yeah,
I want
exactly.
to vision roadmap. But it's gonna be great.
I feel like it nearly becomes your identity. You know, when habits are repeated and people see, like, okay, how does Mandy react? How does Brittany react? What are her habits and showing up and her reactions? Like, it does become your identity. You know,
It's
like if you're like outbursting on everybody, like, yeah, she's reactive. She's, you know, easily set off. But
it's hard to change that too.
apparently I've fooled everybody with patience, but that's another topic.
Depends on the thing, right?
Yeah, it definitely depends on
It depends on the thing, the person of the day.
Right.
You know,
But
yeah.
anywho, going back to you specifically, so what is your vision? I know you've had a bunch of stuff, you know, ebb and flow, and also new beginnings in two different directions. Well, not two different directions, but two new things
Yeah.
in the same direction.
Come on to my plate. Yeah. So I think I am stepping into that.
Mm-hmm.
I think similar to you, it's like putting a vision is hard. I think there are things in my life, like I talked a lot about success, and it's being able to look back and help and assist and guide. And so for me, it's like, okay, my vision is achieving that success.
Yeah.
And how do I do that? What does that look like? So I think podcast has always been like, it's been 2 years in the making. It's the ability to assist and empower other women, right? Like to provide that role model that 15, 13, 20-year-old and 30-year-old Mandy is going to need.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so it's providing that, definitely like building the brand and continuing to do the work here for us to continue to empower women. I think that there's so much potential. I think there's so many women who are like, I've never seen it done. I need mentor. I need to connect with people, and like a lack of community and women who are just like going through it. And so for me, like, I would love to see that come to fruition. It's definitely on my like heart to write a book one day.
Oh my God.
Breaker. I have a unique story.
Yeah,
Let's say like I come from some really difficult stuff. And I think about like, if 13 and 15-year-old Mandy could read a book, I would help her know that she's going to get to the other side of that. Like, that for me would be it.
Yep.
And then continuing to build Empowered. So Empowered is the podcast, but Empowered is also my business as well. That's continuing to support and enable CEOs. I would love to, we talk a lot about EQ.
Yep.
So coaching, leadership, and EQ is kind of on the radar a couple of years down the road, helping to build more empathetic leaders.
Yes.
CEOs, helping to coach them into that and then optimizing that. I think a lot of leaders come into it and we don't provide, like, I stepped into a leadership role with no training. I had no idea what I was doing, no business leading people. But I think the one thing I did know how to do and did do well, if I'm giving myself some credit here, is I led with empathy and I led with understanding. And I think it made it easy for people to want to work with me.
For sure.
And board alongside me. And I think that we have way too many leaders who don't know how to do that and don't prioritize that. And it's not a skill they've been taught. So I would love to kind of mention on that path and work with organizations to help them build that and empower that. Yeah.
I definitely think too, that is achievable for you.
Absolutely.
100%. I think because you have such a passion for it. And also too, you've gone through the ropes of seeing both sides, both empathetic leaders and maybe not so much empathetic leaders. And so, it's important to have experience, and also too, those around you and those listening to you and learning from you are also going to value your experience, because truth be told, that'd be like me with the pin curls. No one wants me to pin curl their hair day one.
Yeah.
But 6 years down the line or down the road, now that I'm here, it's people trust you.
Yeah.
And it's based on that experience that you have went through, and, you're making a name for yourself and establishing. And I think your experience can definitely speak to, the things that you've been through, and also the roads that you've went down, to be able to be a testimony for where you're at now.
Yeah.
And so that's really important. But I definitely think, like I said, still complimenting you on the EQ.
You're amazing. Yeah, but definitely, I think that's one thing that we connect so well on.
Yeah.
It's like, I connect well with other humans that have a high EQ. It is so hard for me to connect. And that's like a spot I want to grow in, with people who don't have a high EQ.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so difficult for me because I'm a sensitive human. Newsflash, I'm a sensitive human. If you don't know me. If you know me, you're not shocked. Highly sensitive, highly feeling, big emotions kind of human. So it's like, when I meet somebody who has a low EQ or isn't emotionally mature, I'm like, my heart hurts for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just want to fix it. I'm like, I want to teach you how to be better. I want you to be kind. I want you to be happy. Like, I'm a fixer.
Both of us are, just BT-dubs. That's going to be,
and we're working on it.
Another podcast.
We're working on it. Yeah. It's like a work in progress.
Talking until we are gray haired and wrinkles.
Yeah. We have so much. Yeah. And like, we haven't even lived life. Like, we are still.
That's the thing. And I
really,
oh my God.
So much. Like, we've lived so much.
We have lived so
And our journeys are so cool, so parallel, but different. Like, it's so cool to see that. And I think with that, like, you just get so many different views and understanding.
For sure.
I would not, like, I think as a child, I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is hard. I wish it wasn't like this. And now, like, nearly 27-year-old me can understand and say, like, you wouldn't be the kind, empathetic, like, emotionally mature human you are today if you didn't walk through all that. Like, you would have an understanding for others who are struggling if you didn't experience that.
Right.
So, and like, it's one of those, you takes a moment to get the perspective you need on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once you put that into that perspective, you can then leverage the whole, like, okay, I've been through this. I've been through trauma. I've been through something difficult. Now, how do I use that in my favor? Like, instead of letting it break you and define you.
Right.
Yeah, like, don't let it use you, use it.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out how do you use it to show up as the version you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think too, while yes, we don't want to allow our experiences to define us, they do, and I don't want that to be misconstrued. But the thing is that you don't want a negative situation to be your narrative. I say, or we say, don't let it define you, but also it will define you. If you take a situation and experience and say it's negative and you allow that to overcome you and create your narrative and allow it to hold you back from success, allow you to hold you back from growing, anything, moving forward, all of that. That's where I say, like, hey, don't let this negative situation define you.
Yeah.
However, let it define you in a way of, okay, I've been through this. I know what it feels like. I'm going to do the opposite and I'm going to capitalize on this moment.
Yes. To be doing the opposite. Huge. Like, so many people come from trauma and they're like, hey, I'm like messed up. I went through something hard.
So I'm just
and
gonna
don't
be
take
that way.
responsibility. Yeah. Like, I'm just this way. And it's like, great, you have a choice. You get to make the
Mhm.
choice. You either follow back into that cycle and you repeat that and you become that and you allow it to be an excuse for you to not show up as the human you should be.
Yeah.
Or you let it empower you to be a better human.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, if you don't do that, you're missing out.
Yep.
Like, you're truly, and you're just continuing this cycle of not greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think, this is kind of like transitioning, but do you think because with Empowered and you're assisting CEOs and, helping them with their EQs and leading their team, do you think that, or would you want it to consist of like travel and doing in-persons or even like conferences and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I would love to do a TED Talk. It's on my like bucket list of goals, a TED Talk.
Mhm.
I love the idea of being able to, like, working with a CEO one-on-one is great.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to make a ripple effect.
Right.
But then what about the emerging leaders who don't like know how to take the steps into leadership, don't believe in themselves enough to be leaders, don't understand like how they can leverage their history to be a leader, right? Like, so in the ability to do conferences and speeches and work with organizations as a whole, like, you really get to impact not just like the CEO at the end of the day, like, that's great, but you're missing like the meat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all of these people that are the backbone of this organization and anything really, like the people who are in it day to day, like, those are your future leaders too. And it's so important to start shaping future leaders before they're in leadership.
Yeah.
Like, giving these people these tools prior to them stepping into a CEO role ensures that when they step into that role, they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have what they need. They know how to show up. And on day one, they're not like, oh boy, who put me here? Like,
Right.
why am I here? How did I get here? What am I doing? And it's like, takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it because they built the framework to kind of lean on emotionally. Like, they're like, okay, I know how to show up well.
Yeah.
You're never going to know. Like, leadership, I feel like, is parenting. And the like, you can read everything you want on it, but until you lead others, you don't know.
Yeah.
You truly have no idea. And it's like, so if you're well built as a parent, if somebody gives you all that, like, here are your morals, here are the things you want to do, here are your values.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing here. If as a leader, you know your values, you know how you want to show up, you know, like, your integrity, you're going to show up 100 times better.
Yeah, agreed. I think that would be good for you because having that like personal connection and in-person connection with the people, even their teams, like, while yes, you're very CEO focused because, you need it to trickle down, being there in support of the whole team under the C-suite and uplift them to be prepared in the case that they want to be in that seat one day, it's going to offer really good company environment too in the culture. And I think, as someone who is not at that CEO level and nowhere near it, humbly so, if I was in a seat and saw someone come in to coach and teach a CEO of how to be better for their company and for their people within the company, it would definitely set something inside of me of being like, okay, this is a place of belonging. And this is a place of like, one, the CEO all the way at the top is trying to be better.
Emotionally mature.
Yeah, emotionally
Thank you.
mature, to trickle down, to appreciate, be better, to flourish, to thrive, like all of those things. Like it would definitely be a good sign within a company
Yeah.
for those that are under C-suite.
Self-aware, right? Yeah, like there's nothing worse than working for a CEO who is not self-aware. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't enable self-awareness for anyone else, right? Like,
Right.
it almost writes off for people who choose to not be self-aware.
Well, you're sitting, I think
Validation.
you're right. Right. I think you're like, you're sitting in just a closed curtain area where all things are moving around you and you're not the self-awareness, not having that. You're just,
You can't lead. How do you lead other people? Right? Like you don't lead. You direct. You might dictate. You might micromanage, but you cannot lead humans, right? Like if you don't know your own stuff, we're going to help them through their stuff.
Right. And granted, obviously everyone knows that Mandy and I are not a CEO. Although she actually just recently became one of ours.
It sounds like a fun title because I was like, cool, I own my own business.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a CEO, so I'm Chief Empowerment Officer.
There you go.
Because I was like, CEO sounds stuffy, sounds boring. Let's have fun with it.
Exactly.
My purpose and role is to empower people.
Yeah.
So
Right. So take this advice as you will.
yeah.
But I think it goes back to speaking on experiences. Mandy and I, although yes, I'm 25 years old, Mandy's 27. We clearly have so much more life to live, God willing. But the thing is that we've been through it. We've seen a lot. We've done a lot. And it's important to be able to take our experiences and learn from them as well. You might be rocking the same boat too. And so
Welcome to the boat.
yeah,
Let's all paddle your life jackets. We're paddling or doing our best. Yeah. I think I like to look at it as like I'm far from a finished project.
Oh,
Always learning, always growing. But I think there's somebody who once sat in my shoes who like, is there something I can do to help make that easier for you? Right. Like, and it's also the self-awareness, like taking a moment to look back and be like, okay, what did I learn from this? What am I experiencing from this? And talk through it with somebody. Like that's huge.
Yep.
I think it really helps you really grab context. Things and put it into perspective and then begin to implement changes and growth. And you can't keep moving forward if you don't kind of casually take a moment to look back in the rearview mirror and say, okay, where did I go? What didn't work? What is working? Because you're just going to be driving forward blindly.
Yeah.
And that's not efficient.
No, not at all. I definitely think too, it's being efficient is also, being self-critical, because you have to look back and see, because the thing is that if you're still going forward and doing the same things and the same patterns and repeating habits, it's only going to lead you so far.
So you're going to get the same result.
Exactly. And so having, being self-critical does not mean being harsh on yourself whatsoever.
No, I think that can be detrimental too.
Exactly.
Don't
be hard on yourself and don't tear yourself down.
Grace and self-compassion, but be realistic.
Exactly.
Yeah, have enough integrity to say like,
right,
this did or didn't work, and don't like the worst thing you could do is lie to yourself, right, and not have that awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And looking back and being able to say, okay, so you're being critical in quotations for audios. You're challenging yourself to be better, and you're challenging yourself to be better the next time you do something similar. And I think, within leadership and especially within your role and doing something brand new, because this is brand new for you,
so
something, a dream that you've been wanting to accomplish and achieve, you're going to have the chance to look at yourself and say, okay, how can I improve with my next client?
Yeah.
And if you're able to do that, your ability to become better and better each time is going to be continued open doors for you to say, okay, I can take this situation, learn from it, know how I can do better, and then implement those changes with your new client. And also too, I think even asking your clients for feedback.
Yes. Because we can it's great that I perceive I'm adding value.
Right.
That's wonderful, but I'm not paying myself. Right? I'm not the one who's buying the service. Right. I think in any business, you cannot be tone deaf, right? Like you can't be blind. You
That's
can't
such a good
shut yourself out. Like you have to know if people like working with you, the value they perceive from working with you, because if you're selling a product that people don't value, you're not selling your product.
Nope.
It's not, nobody's buying it. Like it's great that you love it, but unless
Yeah.
you're in some sort of situation that I'm not in myself, which good for you if you are, like if you're ignorant to that, then you're not going to go anywhere.
No.
You're not making progress. Like you have to have something that's marketable.
Yeah.
You have to be marketable and you have to bring value to someone somewhere. You don't have to bring value to the masses, but someone somewhere has to see value in what you're offering.
Yep.
And if it's one person because you've like niched yourself into that, then that's going to suck too, because now you're trying to find one person who wants to buy your product or service, who you are. But
Yeah.
like if you're really checking in with people to say like, hey, what value do I bring to you? Like, why are you paying me to do this? Then you can understand what other people might value and what they might want to pay for, purchase, and grow from there and go from there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Do you feel so far? I know it's been very soon that this just launched. What was it? 3 days?
So the business went live on February 22nd. I was officially like filed with my EIN.
There you go.
That's for reals. It's been, I think we're on week three of offering my services. So the launching. Yeah.
And it's went by like that too. Like I remember, so the thing is that to explain the dynamic, so Mandy and I, and just here recently used to, which I'm going to have to get used to saying that,
I know.
but used to work together, and we sat, right next to one another. And
we're roommates.
We were roommates. And so the thing is that, like we said earlier, we've been able to watch this whole process of like our lives, changing so drastically in complete, total different areas.
Yeah.
But somehow we've still maintained together and just like moving up on this ladder. And it's been beautiful. It's been so surreal too.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy that it's been 3 weeks, because I literally, you heard me earlier, I was like, three days.
Yeah, you're like, it was just yesterday, right? Like,
Right.
I sent that email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's so neat. And I think too, like, we're people who appreciate the small things, but like we've done such big things too. And now we're finally able to share it with everybody. And so that's even more exciting.
It's huge. Yeah. I think getting to be able to, like, I'm learning as I go.
Right.
So, and it's like, I don't know that I feel like I had a role model even to launch this.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm offering something that's kind of unique, kind of niche. I don't have a mentor at the moment that I'm like working with. So it's like, maybe there's somebody else out there who's doing the same thing or thinking like the same thing. I know there are so many people in the startup space who are like, I have a vast set of skills. What the heck do I do with them? And it's like, figure it out. Or people who are like, hey, I want to change my job. I want to do something different. I see layoffs all over LinkedIn.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, if you're applying and you're not getting what you want out of it, create the opportunities you want. Figure out how to create it. And so it's like, if my experience can teach you that, I'm happy to share it. Like, and it's not to say that it's profound in any way, but it worked for me. Like I wasn't seeing what I wanted.
Yep.
I knew I needed something that aligned with my values, my morals, my energy. And so I said, what better way than to create it?
Yeah.
Right. And now is the time. I think I kept being like, okay, the right time. And I'm like, you know what? Like, it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, it's the time.
I think, we do focus on like the right time. And like I was saying, going back to our plans and exactly when the door opens and all of that. But I feel like when opportunities arise and they come at that right time, when you're questioning, okay, is this the right time? I feel like that's exactly when you need to jump.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're
so.
100% right. Like, if the opportunity is in front of you and you're not sure, it's in front of you for a reason.
Exactly.
Like, it's lined up for a reason. It's the thing you've been asking for. And now you're going to close the door on it. And you're going to say, no, I want to wait for the right time. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to like suddenly feel really confident or super skilled? Or I like that it just is correct.
We gave thumbs up.
It's like, what are you waiting for though? Right? Yeah. Like, you're going to wait for this perfect moment. And in waiting, you're going to miss the opportunity. It's entirely like, it's just going to pass you by. And you're just going to spend your whole life waiting for the perfect opportunity. And you're never going to find it.
Yeah. And that's on being realistic.
Yeah, like
And
we're
that's
not-
on being
does
realistic.
not exist. It's
Yeah.
never gonna happen. And here we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just gotta take the doors as they open and keep your mind open. I think
Exactly.
that's huge, right? Like I am kind of seeing where this adventure goes and taking it one day at a time, but like being open to those opportunities is what got me to this spot.
Yeah.
So that it's only gonna get me further.
Right.
So I definitely cannot complain.
There you go.
All right.
We've made it to the second episode and learning more about Miss Mandy and honestly opening doors and knowing when to step through them. I think that's really important. And I think what's also really special is that you are getting to see and literally be on this road with us of blocking everything and also going on this journey because we're in two incredibly important paths in our life, and being able to be together but still moving forward is something so special. And y'all are going to go on this whole entire journey with us because we're right at the beginning and there's no turning back, truly.
This is it. We're committed. I've said we will make no less than 100 episodes. I don't know if we've got a goal sheet.
Yeah.
And I have no less than 100 episodes. So that means you're stuck with us.
Yeah.
We're committed. That's it. Yeah. And I think one thing, if you're going to take away anything from it, is continuing to align into your values and leaning into that and like that EQ. If you're someone who, like me, is highly empathetic and prioritizes kindness, do not ever, please, let somebody tell you that's a bad thing. Like there is a place for it. There are people who appreciate it. It's a wonderful thing. And I truly think like it will open more doors for you than anything.
Exactly.
I think that the people who don't prioritize that, like they miss out on so much at the end of the day.
For sure.
And like lean into that, acknowledge who you are. Maybe you don't lead with EQ and kindness, but maybe there's something else that makes you so unique in who you are. Lean into it and figure out how to capitalize on it.
Yeah, definitely. And also too, like we were saying earlier, Mandy is so kind, and being able to really tap in to that value of her. I've been able to sit across from her and say, okay, you are so kind, and you like people need to value that and see that within you. But I was also to that reminder of you are kind and people take advantage of it.
Yes.
And so while Mandy is going to encourage you to be kind, to lead with that kindness and how your morals want to be so important to you, I am going to second that. But also too, I'm going to be Mama Bear and say, don't you dare allow someone to take advantage of your kindness. And while yes, you can still lead with kindness and be sweet and kind and wholesome and lovable in all things, make sure that your backbone is still as strong as ever. And don't let anyone break it.
Yeah, because you'll lose your kindness. If not,
You'll lose it.
You'll be so bitter. You will not be kind. So give it to those who deserve it.
Yeah.
And give it to people who don't deserve it, but don't let them interfere with it.
Exactly.
Like give them the amount they deserve and let them have the day they deserve. And give it wholeheartedly to the people who truly deserve it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yourself included.
Yep.
All right.
Thank y'all for episode 2.
We're excited to keep tuning in and chill down next week for the next episode.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.